This woman is clearly mentally disturbed. She's a homeless...
up!
Shoot up, you lying, murdering, thieving piece of garbage!
You know, they say when you're at rock bottom, the only way is up. But what they don't tell you is how dark it gets right before that first ray of light breaks through. My name is Precious Williams, and I'm about to tell you a story that changed everything I thought I knew about justice, power, and what it means to fight for what's yours. But before I proceed, I want you to do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop your country in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening to me from. Thank you. Sitting here today in my warm apartment, watching my daughter Amara practice her violin by the window, it's hard to believe where we were just 2 years ago. But let me take you back to where it all began. Not to that cold December morning when everything exploded in public, but to 15 years ago when I was young, brilliant, and foolishly trusting. I was 26 then, fresh out of MIT with a master's degree in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Can you believe that? A black woman from the south side of Chicago, first in my family to go to college, walking across that stage with one of the most prestigious degrees in tech. My mama, God rest her soul, she worked 3 jobs to help me through school. She used to say, "Baby, your mind is your weapon. Don't let nobody take that from you." If only I had listened. I landed a job at Tech Vision Solutions, this startup that was trying to revolutionize predictive analytics for healthcare. The CEO was this smooth-talking white man named Ben Ashford, 40-something, always in expensive suits, with this way of making you feel like you were part of something bigger than yourself. He had this vision, he said, of making healthcare accessible to everyone through artificial intelligence. I was one of only 3 female employees in a company of 47 people. The only woman. You know how that feels? Walking into those meetings, seeing all those men's faces turn to look at you. Some curious, some dismissive, most just uncomfortable. But I had my mama's voice in my head, telling me I belonged there. For months, I threw myself into the work. 60-hour weeks were normal. 80-hour weeks during crunch time. I lived and breathed code, algorithms, data patterns. And then it happened. The breakthrough that would change everything. I remembered the exact moment. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March 2009. I'd been working on this problem for weeks. How to predict patient deterioration in hospitals with 94% accuracy using minimal data inputs. Everyone said it was impossible. The computational power required, the data complexity, the real-time processing needs, it couldn't be done. But I figured it out. I developed what I called the Adaptive Predictive Care Algorithm, APCA for short. It was beautiful in its simplicity and revolutionary in its application. Instead of trying to process massive amounts of data, my algorithm learned to identify the 23 most critical biomarkers and patient indicators that, when analyzed together in real time, could predict with stunning accuracy when a patient was about to take a turn for the worse. I was shaking when I finished the final lines of code. This wasn't just a program. This was going to save lives. Thousands, maybe millions of lives. Hospitals could intervene before patients crashed. Emergency departments could prioritize care. Rural clinics with limited resources could compete with major medical centers. I spent the next 2 days documenting everything. The theory, the methodology, the implementation, the testing results. I created presentation slides, wrote up the patent applications, prepared financial projections. This was it. This was going to put Tech Vision on the map. That Thursday morning, I walked into Ben's office with my laptop, a stack of papers, and the biggest smile I'd worn in years. "Ben, you're going to want to sit down for this," I said, barely containing my excitement. He looked up from his computer, that familiar smile spreading across his face. "Precious, what's got you so fired up this early?" For the next hour, I walked him through everything. The problem, the solution, the implications. I showed him the test results. 94.2% accuracy in predicting patient deterioration with false positive rates below 3%. I explained how we could license this to hospitals worldwide, how it could be implemented with existing infrastructure, how it could save healthcare systems billions of dollars while saving countless lives. Ben was quiet through most of my presentation, just nodding, occasionally asking a technical question. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled low. Precious, this is incredible work. Absolutely incredible. I felt like I could fly. I know we need to discuss implementation timelines, patent filings, maybe bringing in some additional investors to scale. He held up a hand. Slow down there, superstar. This is big. Really big. And that means we need to be smart about how we handle it. What do you mean? Ben stood up, walked around his desk, and leaned against it, crossing his arms. Precious, you're brilliant. Don't get me wrong. But this industry, it's not always ready for change. Especially change coming from... He paused, looking uncomfortable. From what, Ben? Look, I'm just trying to be real with you. You're a young woman in a field dominated by older men. These hospital administrators, these investors, they have certain expectations about who they're dealing with. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What do you mean? I'm saying that if we want this technology to actually make it to market, to actually help people, we need to think strategically about presentation, about optics. The room was spinning a little bit. Ben, this is my work, my algorithm, my breakthrough. Of course it is, and you'll be recognized for it. But think about it practically. Would you rather be right, or would you rather see your work actually save lives? Because I can tell you right now, if we walk into a boardroom with you as the face of this technology, half those investors will tune out before you even start talking. It's not fair, but it's reality. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. So you really think they won't take me seriously? I don't think it, Precious. I know it. I've been in this business for 15 years. I've seen brilliant women, brilliant black women get dismissed because of people's unconscious biases. Don't let their ignorance stop your work from reaching the people who need it. So I said yes. God help me. I said yes. We shook hands on it that day. Ben promised me 30% equity in any company we formed around the technology, plus a base salary of $120,000 a year. All I had to do was transfer the intellectual property to the company and let him handle the business side. Within 6 months, Ben had spun off a new company called Ashford Medical Technologies. He was the CEO and founder. I was listed as the chief technical officer, but somehow my name kept getting smaller and smaller on presentations and marketing materials. The algorithm worked perfectly. Our first hospital pilot program saved 12 lives in the first month. News outlets started calling it revolutionary. Forbes ran a profile on Ben titled "The Visionary CEO Transforming Healthcare with AI." They mentioned me in one paragraph as part of his talented technical team. I should have been proud. We were saving lives, just like I dreamed. But watching Ben accept award after award, seeing his face on magazine covers, hearing him give keynote speeches about his breakthrough, it ate at me. By 2011, Ashford Medical Technologies was worth $200 million. Ben was being called one of the most innovative minds in healthcare technology. My 8% equity stake, which should have been worth nearly $90 million, had been reduced to less than 2% through various legal maneuvers and contract clauses I didn't fully understand, but trusted Ben to handle fairly. And then I met David. David Williams was an investigative journalist for the Chicago Tribune, working on a series about diversity in tech startups. He came to interview me as one of the few black women in senior technical roles at a successful AI company. David was everything Ben wasn't. Thoughtful where Ben was flashy, humble where Ben was grandiose, genuinely interested in justice where Ben just talked about disruption. He asked me real questions about my work, about my experience in the industry, about the challenges I faced as a Black woman in tech. During our third interview session, which had somehow turned into dinner at this little Ethiopian restaurant on the South Side, David asked me something that stopped me cold. "Precious, can you walk me through how you and Ben came up with the APCA algorithm together?" "I developed it myself," I said automatically. David looked confused. But in every interview I've read with Ben, he talks about their collaborative breakthrough, the long nights brainstorming, the shared eureka moment. I felt that cold sensation in my stomach again. "David, I need to show you something." That night, I pulled out all my original documentation, the time-stamped files, the email threads, the presentation I'd given Ben that first day. I showed David everything. David stared at the documents for a long time. Then he looked up at me with this expression I'll never forget. Part anger, part sadness, part determination. "Precious, do you realize what this means? Ben has built his entire career, his entire fortune on your work, and he's convinced the whole world that it was his idea." "But I agreed to it," I said weakly. "I knew he was going to be the face of the company." "Did you agree to him claiming he invented the algorithm? Did you agree to him telling reporters about collaborative breakthroughs that never happened? Did you agree to your equity stake being diluted down to almost nothing?" I hadn't. Of course I hadn't. David and I fell in love over the course of his investigation. He was everything I needed, someone who saw me, who valued me, who believed in my worth. We got married in a small ceremony in 2012, and Amara was born the following year. By then, David had published his series on tech industry inequities, including a detailed piece about what had happened to me at Ashford Medical Technologies. The article was powerful, well-researched, and absolutely damning. It should have changed everything. It changed nothing. Ben issued a statement saying that while he valued my technical contributions, the characterization of the algorithm's development was inaccurate. He produced contracts showing that I had willingly transferred intellectual property to the company. He had lawyers, PR firms, and industry connections. I had documentation and David's articles. Guess who won in the court of public opinion? The tech industry closed ranks around Ben. He was invited to speak at more conferences than ever before. Ashford Medical Technologies went public in 2014 with a valuation of $1.2 billion. Then became an actual billionaire. My 8% equity stake, which should have been worth nearly $100 million, had been reduced to less than 2% through various legal maneuvers and contract clauses I'd been too trusting to understand. When the company went public, my shares were worth about $15 million, still life-changing money, but a fraction of what they should have been. Except I never saw that money. The lawyers found ways to tie up the payout in escrow accounts and legal challenges. Ben's team argued that I had violated non-compete clauses by speaking to the media. They claimed I had breached confidentiality agreements by showing David my original work. By 2015, David and I were spending more on legal fees than we were earning. David's newspaper was downsizing, and his investigation into tech industry practices had made him some powerful enemies. He was having trouble finding work. The stress was killing us both. David started staying up all night researching case law, looking for some angle we'd missed. I was trying to raise Amara while fighting a legal battle against a billionaire with unlimited resources. In December 2015, David decided to confront Ben directly. He'd found evidence that Ben had used identical language from my original patent applications in speeches he'd given years later, claiming the ideas as his own. It was proof of intentional fraud, not just business gamesmanship. David called Ben and demanded a meeting. Ben agreed, surprisingly. He said he wanted to settle things like gentlemen. They met at Ben's penthouse office in downtown Chicago on December 18th, 2015 at 8 p.m. David never came home. The police found his body in the Chicago River 3 days later. They said it was a tragic accident. David had been walking along the Riverwalk after his meeting and somehow fallen in. The winter water was so cold that hypothermia would have set in within minutes. But David was an excellent swimmer. He'd been on his high school swim team. He was careful around water, especially in winter. And the medical examiner found traces of sedatives in his system that couldn't be explained. I tried to tell the police about the meeting, about the legal battle, about the millions of dollars at stake. But Ben had alibis, security footage showing him leaving the office before David would have made it to the Riverwalk, and the best lawyers money could buy. The investigation was closed within 6 weeks. Accidental death. I knew better. In my heart, in my soul, I knew Ben had killed my husband, but I couldn't prove it, and I had a 3-year-old daughter to protect. The legal fees from David's death investigation wiped out our savings. Without David's income and with my legal payout still tied up in court, I couldn't afford our apartment. I had to sell everything we owned just to pay the lawyers. By 2016, Amara and I were living in a studio apartment in one of the worst neighborhoods in Chicago. By 2017, we were in a homeless shelter. By 2018, we were living in my car. You want to know what rock bottom feels like? It's sitting in a McDonald's parking lot at midnight in January, holding your 5-year-old daughter while she cries from hunger. And you've got $3.75 in your wallet and half a tank of gas. It's explaining to your brilliant, beautiful child why she can't start kindergarten like other kids because you don't have an address. It's watching the little girl who should have been living in a mansion funded by your breakthrough discovery, instead learning to sleep in the backseat of a 2008 Honda Civic. But you know what? Even at rock bottom, I never stopped believing in justice. I never stopped believing that the truth would come out eventually. And I never stopped working on improving my algorithm. Yeah, that's right. Even while living in homeless shelters and my car, I was still coding. I'd found ways to access computers at libraries and community centers. I'd kept copies of all my original work, and I'd continued developing it. By 2019, my APCA algorithm had evolved into something even more powerful, APCA 2.0. It could now predict not just patient deterioration, but optimal treatment protocols, drug interaction risks, and surgical outcome probabilities. It was a complete healthcare AI system that could revolutionize medicine. But I also knew that Ben's version of my original algorithm was running into problems. The healthcare industry was demanding more sophisticated predictive capabilities. Hospitals wanted integration with emerging technologies. Ben's team had been trying to upgrade the system for years, but they didn't truly understand the underlying principles. They couldn't innovate beyond my original work. I started hearing rumors through online forums and healthcare technology publications. Ashford Medical Technologies was struggling to meet next-generation demands. Their stock price was declining. Competitors were catching up with newer, more advanced systems. Ben needed help. He needed the original creator of the algorithm to solve the problems his hired programmers couldn't figure out. He needed me. But I wasn't that naive 26-year-old anymore. I was a 36-year-old woman who had lost everything because of trusting the wrong person. I was a mother who had watched her daughter go hungry because a billionaire stole her work and killed her husband. I wasn't interested in helping Ben Ashford. I was interested in destroying him. In early 2020, I learned that Ben was planning to announce APCA 3.0 at the International Healthcare Innovation Summit in Chicago. He was claiming to have solved all the integration and scalability issues that were plaguing the current system. The announcement was scheduled for March 15th, 2020, and every major investor, hospital administrator, and media outlet in healthcare would be there. The only problem was APCA 3.0 didn't exist. Ben's team had spent 3 years and $50 million trying to develop it, and they had failed completely. I knew because I'd been quietly monitoring their progress through contacts I'd made in the development community. Ben was planning to fake the entire presentation. He was going to promise capabilities he couldn't deliver, take pre-orders from hospitals and health systems, and figure out the technical problems later. It was fraud on a massive scale, and it would put patient lives at risk when the promised system inevitably failed. I couldn't let that happen. On March 14th, 2020, Amara and I were living in a women's shelter on the west side. I'd been working nights at a 24-hour diner to save money, and Amara was in second grade at a school where they provided free breakfast and lunch because so many of the students qualified for meal assistance. That morning, I told Amara I had to go somewhere important. "Where are you going, Mama?" she asked, looking up from her homework at the little table in our shared room. "I'm going to get back what's ours, baby girl." "Are we going to have our own house again?" I knelt down and looked into her beautiful brown eyes, David's eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going to have our own house again. Your daddy would be proud of what we're going to do today." I put on the only professional outfit I still owned, a black blazer and slacks I'd kept for job interviews. I took 3 buses to get to the convention center downtown, using my last $20 for transportation. The Healthcare Innovation Summit was everything I expected. Hundreds of people in expensive suits, networking and making deals that would affect millions of patients. I didn't have a ticket, obviously, but I'd learned a few things about getting into places during my years of struggling. Sometimes, if you walk with confidence and purpose, people assume you belong. I made it into the main auditorium just as Ben was taking the stage for his keynote presentation. He looked exactly the same as he had 10 years earlier. Expensive suit, perfect hair, that confident smile that had once convinced me to trust him with my life's work. "Ladies and gentlemen," then began, his voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "Today marks a revolutionary moment in healthcare technology. After 3 years of intensive development, Ashford Medical Technologies is proud to announce APCA 3.0, the most advanced predictive healthcare system ever created." I felt my hands clench into fists. He was really going through with it. This breakthrough system will provide real-time patient monitoring, predictive intervention protocols, and integrated care optimization across entire hospital networks. We're talking about preventing medical errors before they happen, optimizing treatment protocols for individual patients, and saving thousands of lives while reducing healthcare costs by up to 30%. The audience was murmuring excitedly. I could see reporters taking notes, investors leaning forward in their seats. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds too good to be true. But let me show you the data. He clicked to his first slide, a graph showing patient outcome improvements. I recognized the methodology immediately. It was based on my APCA 2.0 projections, the work I'd been developing in secret over the past few years. He'd stolen my work again. Somehow, Ben had gained access to my updated research, maybe through industry contacts, maybe through corporate espionage, maybe through hacking into the library computers where I'd been working. But there it was on his presentation slides, my latest breakthrough being presented as his innovation. I stood up from my seat in the back of the auditorium. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice cutting through the hushed room. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we'll have questions after the presentation," he said smoothly. I started walking toward the stage. "Oh, I don't have a question, Mr. Ashford. I have a correction." Security guards started moving toward me, but I kept walking and talking as they tried to drag me away. "You see, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ashford is lying to you. APCA 3.0 doesn't exist. His company has spent 3 years and $50 million trying to develop it, and they failed completely." The room erupted in confused murmurs. Ben's face had gone pale. "Ma'am, you need to leave immediately," he said, gesturing frantically to security. But I was almost to the stage now, and my voice was carrying clearly to every corner of the auditorium. What Mr. Ashford is showing you is my work, my research, just like he stole my original APCA algorithm 15 years ago when I was a naive young engineer who trusted him with my life's work. "Security," Ben shouted. 2 guards grabbed my arms, but I kept talking as they tried to drag me away. "My name is Precious Williams. I am the creator of the APCA algorithm. Ben Ashford stole my work, stole my equity, and when my husband tried to expose the truth, he had him killed." The room was in chaos now. Reporters were shouting questions, audience members were standing up, cameras were flashing. Ben leaned into his microphone, his face red with anger. "This woman is clearly mentally disturbed. She's a homeless person who's been harassing our company for years with these ridiculous accusations." And that's when I lost it. That's when 15 years of rage, grief, and injustice boiled over. That's when I shouted the words that would change everything. "Shut up!" My voice echoed through the convention center like thunder. The security guards actually stepped back, startled by the force of it. "Shut up, you lying, murdering, thieving piece of garbage. You destroyed my life. You killed my husband. You stole food from my daughter's mouth. And you have the audacity to call me crazy?" The entire auditorium was dead silent now. Every camera, every phone, every pair of eyes was focused on me. You want to know who's mentally disturbed, Ben? It's the man who stole a brilliant black woman's breakthrough discovery and built a billion-dollar empire on her work. It's the man who convinced a young engineer that no one would take her seriously because of the color of her skin. It's the man who killed an innocent journalist because he dared to tell the truth. I pulled out my phone, an old cracked device I'd bought from a pawn shop, but it still had internet access. I have all the proof right here. Original code timestamps, email communications, patent applications with my name on them from 15 years ago. I have documentation showing that APCA 3.0 is based on entirely my research I've been conducting while living in homeless shelters because this man destroyed my life. Ben was frantically whispering to his legal team, but I wasn't done. And you know what the most disgusting part is? While I've been sleeping in my car with my 7-year-old daughter, eating meals at soup cakes and wondering if we'll have a place to sleep tonight, this man has been living in penthouse apartments and giving interviews about his innovative genius. Tears were streaming down my face now, but my voice was steady and strong. But here's what Ben doesn't know. Here's what his team of overpaid programmers couldn't figure out in 3 years. The APCA algorithm isn't just code. It's not just mathematical formulas and data processing protocols. It's built on something deeper than that. I looked directly at Ben, who was staring at me with a mixture of fear and hatred. It's built on love, Ben. Love for patients who need help. Love for families who are scared and desperate in hospital waiting rooms. Love for healthcare workers who are doing their best with limited resources. That's why your team can't replicate it. That's why your APCA 3.0 doesn't work, because you can't fake that kind of passion. You can't steal that kind of dedication. The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. I spent 15 years believing that the truth didn't matter if the powerful people had better lawyers. I spent 15 years thinking that justice was just a fairy tale they tell children. I let this man convince me that I didn't deserve credit for my own work because of who I am and what I look like. But I was wrong. The truth always matters. Justice isn't just a fairy tale. And no one has the right to steal your dreams and tell you that you don't deserve them. Ben finally found his voice. This is character assassination. This woman is mentally ill. She's been stalking our company for years with these insane conspiracy theories. Then sue me, Ben, I called back. Take me to court. Let's put all the evidence in front of a judge and jury. Let's see what happens when you have to explain your billion-dollar empire under oath. Ben's lawyer was pulling at his sleeve, whispering urgently in his ear. Whatever he was saying made Ben's face go red to gray. Because we both knew that a public trial was the last thing Ben wanted. Too many documents would become public record, too many witnesses would be called to testify, too many uncomfortable questions would be asked. I walked off the stage and straight to the group of reporters who had gathered near the front row. Dr. Williams, one of them called out, can you provide documentation to support your claims? All of it, I said. Every email, every patent application, every piece of code, every legal document. I've been carrying proof of this theft for 15 years, waiting for the right moment to share it. What do you want from Mr. Ashford? I paused, thinking about Amara back at the shelter, probably doing homework at that little table, trusting that her mama was going to make things better. I want what was always mine. I want credit for my work. I want the equity I was promised. I want justice for my husband. And I want every woman, every single woman, irrespective of their color, black or white, every individual who's been told they're not good enough or smart enough or worthy enough to know that they deserve better. Over the next 6 hours, my life changed completely. The video of my confrontation with Ben went viral within 2 hours. Hashtag Justice for Precious started trending on social media. News outlets picked up the story. Legal experts began analyzing the documents I provided. By evening, 3 major law firms had called offering to represent me pro bono. By the next morning, the FBI had opened an investigation into David's death based on new evidence I'd provided. By the end of the week, the Securities and Exchange Commission was investigating Ashford Medical Technologies for fraud. Ben's empire began crumbling almost immediately. Stock prices plummeted as investors realized the promised APCA 3.0 system didn't actually exist. Hospital systems canceled contracts. Board members resigned. Within a month, Ben was arrested on charges of intellectual property theft, securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence was overwhelming once investigators started digging. David hadn't been his first victim. There were 2 other people who had died under suspicious circumstances after threatening to expose Ben's business practices. The trial lasted 8 months. I testified for 3 days, walking the jury through 15 years of stolen work, broken promises, and calculated cruelty. When I described finding David's body, when I talked about explaining to Amara why we had to sleep in the car, when I showed them the original code I'd written in homeless shelters while fighting to survive, there wasn't a dry eye in that courtroom. Ben was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But you know what? The conviction wasn't the most important part of this story. The most important part happened during the trial, when dozens of women came forward with similar stories. White women, Black women, Latina women, Asian women, Native American women, brilliant engineers and scientists who had been told their ideas weren't valuable, who had been pushed aside in favor of men who promised to help them navigate male-dominated industries. We formed a support network. We shared resources. We started a legal fund to help women fight similar battles. We created mentorship programs to help young women protect their intellectual property and advocate for themselves. Most importantly, we proved that the truth does matter, that justice isn't just a fairy tale, that no one has the right to steal your dreams, no matter how powerful they are or how powerless you feel. Today, APCA 3.0, my real APCA 3.0, is being implemented in hospitals across the country under my name, through my company, with my leadership. The system I developed while living in shelters is now saving lives in major medical centers worldwide. Amara and I live in a beautiful house with a big backyard where she can play violin by the garden David always wanted to plant. She's in 4th grade now, excelling in mathematics and computer science. But more importantly, she's learning that her voice matters, that her ideas have value, that she never has to make herself smaller to make someone else comfortable. The financial settlement from Ben's companies was substantial, enough to ensure that Amara and I will never want for anything again. But I don't keep it all. Most of it goes toward programs that help women in STEM fields, that provide legal assistance to people fighting intellectual property theft, that support families who have lost loved ones to corporate violence. Because here's what I learned during those 15 years of struggle. Your worth isn't determined by other people's recognition. Your value doesn't decrease because someone else refuses to see it. Your dreams don't become less valid because someone steals them. And most importantly, the moment you stop fighting for what's yours, the moment you accept that injustice is just the way things are, that's the moment you lose everything that truly matters. I think about David every day. I wish he could see Amara growing up strong and confident. I wish he could see the programs we've created, the women we've helped, the changes we've made. But I know he'd be proud. He'd be proud that we never gave up, that we kept fighting, that we turned our pain into purpose. To every woman listening to this story, to every person in them told they're not good enough or smart enough or worthy enough, you are enough. Your ideas matter. Your voice deserves to be heard. Your dreams are valid and valuable and worth fighting for. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Don't let anyone steal what's yours. Don't let anyone silence you. And if they really try to take away everything you've worked for, remember that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand up and shout, "Shut up," right back at them. Because the truth will always win in the end. Justice will always prevail eventually. And your voice, your beautiful, powerful, irreplaceable voice, is stronger than any lie they try to tell about you. That's my promise to you. That's my commitment to every person who refuses to be silenced. That's the legacy I want to leave for my daughter and for every generation that comes after us. You see, there's something else I learned through all of this. Something that took me years to understand. The day I walked into that auditorium and confronted Ben wasn't just about getting my work back or seeking justice for David. It was about reclaiming my voice, my power, my right to exist in spaces where I was told I didn't belong. For 15 years, I carried shame like a weight on my shoulders. Shame that I'd been stupid enough to trust Ben. Shame that I hadn't protected David better. Shame that I'd let my daughter see me struggle, see me fail, see me broken, and see me cry. But shame was never mine to carry. The shame belonged to the man who chose greed over integrity, who chose cruelty over compassion, who chose to destroy lives rather than share success. I was never the problem. I was never too trusting, too naive, too anything. I was a brilliant woman who deserved better. And when I finally realized that, truly realized it in my bones, that's when everything changed. The night after Ben's sentencing, I took Amara to Navy Pier. We rode the Ferris wheel as the sun set over Lake Michigan, the same lake where David's life had ended, but where our new life was beginning. Mama, Amara said as our car reached the top of the wheel, "Are you sad that the bad man is gone?" I thought about that question for a long moment. Was I sad? Was I relieved? What did justice actually feel like when it finally arrived? "No, baby girl," I told her. "I'm not sad that he's gone, but I'm not happy about it either. What I feel is peaceful, like a storm that's finally passed." "Will other bad men try to steal from smart ladies like you?" I said honestly, but you know what? Those smart ladies are going to be ready for them because they're going to know their worth. They're going to protect their work. They're going to support each other, and they're going to fight back when someone tries to take what's theirs. Amara was quiet for a while, watching the city lights begin to twinkle below us. "Mama, when I grow up and invent something amazing, will you help me protect it?" I squeezed her hand tighter. "Baby, when you grow up and invent something amazing, and I know you will, you're going to know exactly how to protect it yourself because you're going to be stronger and smarter and braver than I ever was." That conversation stays with me every day as I watch Amara grow into the confident, brilliant young woman she's becoming. She speaks up in class when she has ideas. She questions things that don't make sense to her. She stands up for her friends when they're being treated unfairly. She's everything I wish I had been at her age and everything I had to learn to become. The ripple effects of that day at the convention center continue to spread in ways I never expected. Last month, a young Latina engineer in Silicon Valley sent me a video message. She'd been offered a partnership where she would do the technical work while her male colleague handled the business development. Instead of accepting, she remembered my story and insisted on equal recognition and equity. She got it. 3 weeks ago, a Black woman in Atlanta called our legal hotline. Her former employer was trying to claim ownership of a medical device she'd invented in her spare time. We connected her with lawyers who specialize in intellectual property theft, and she's fighting back. She's going to win. Yesterday, I received an email from a Native American computer science student who was being told that her AI research proposal was too ambitious for someone at her level. Instead of scaling back her dreams, she's applying for grants specifically designed to support underrepresented inventors. She thanked me for showing her that ambitious dreams aren't a weakness, they're a superpower. This is what victory actually looks like. Not just one woman getting justice, but every woman who comes after her knowing that she deserves justice too. Not just one story being told, but thousands of stories being heard. Not just one voice being amplified, but an entire chorus of voices refusing to be silenced. The Ben Ashfords of the world are counting on our silence. They're counting on our shame. They're counting on us believing that we're not smart enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough to fight back. They're counting on us accepting that this is just how things are, and there's nothing you can really do about it. But they're wrong. There's everything we can do about it. We can document our work meticulously. We can build networks of support with other women in our fields. We can mentor young women coming up behind us. We can share our stories, even when they're painful. We can vote for leaders who prioritize equality and justice. We can support businesses that are owned by women. We can speak up when we witness discrimination or theft. Most importantly, we can raise our daughters and our sons to believe that everyone deserves respect, recognition, and the fruits of their own labor. The APCA algorithm that I developed all those years ago has now evolved into a comprehensive healthcare AI system that's being used in over 200 hospitals worldwide. Every day, it helps save lives, optimize treatment protocols, and reduce medical errors. Every day, it fulfills the promise I made to myself as a young engineer, to use technology to help people who need it most. But you know what I'm most proud of? It's not the lives saved or the money earned or the recognition finally received. It's the fact that my daughter goes to sleep every night knowing that her mother never gave up, that her mother fought for what was right, that her mother's voice mattered. And when Amara faces her own challenges, because we all do, she'll remember that her mother stood up to a billionaire in front of hundreds of people and won. She'll remember that justice is possible, that truth matters, that her voice has power. That's the real legacy of this story. Not just the downfall of one corrupt man, but the rise of countless women who refuse to be diminished. Not the recovery of one stolen invention, but the protection of all future innovations. Not the victory of one family, but the empowerment of entire communities. 6 months ago, I was invited to give the keynote speech at MIT's graduation ceremony, the same institution where I'd earned my degree 30 years earlier, where I'd first learned to believe in my own potential. Standing at that podium, looking out at hundreds of brilliant young faces about to enter the world with their own dreams and ambitions, I felt the full weight of responsibility. These young people were where I had been 3 decades ago, full of hope, eager to make a difference, ready to trust that hard work and good intentions would be enough. Some of them would face the same challenges I faced. Some of them would encounter their own versions of Ben Ashford. The world will try to convince you that your ideas aren't valuable enough, that your voice isn't strong enough, that your dreams aren't realistic enough. When that happens, and it will happen, remember that they're not trying to protect you from disappointment. They're trying to protect themselves from competition. The applause was thunderous, but more importantly, I could see recognition in their eyes, understanding, determination. Your worth is not determined by other people's ability to see it. Your value is not diminished by other people's inability to appreciate it. Your dreams are not made smaller by other people's lack of vision. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She was graduating with a degree in biomedical engineering and had developed a prototype for a prosthetic device that could restore sensation to amputees. She was brilliant, innovative, and scared. Dr. Williams, she said, I've already had 2 companies offer to help me develop my invention. They want to handle the business side while I focus on the technical aspects. Instead of accepting, I'm not sure I should trust them. I smiled, remembering my 26-year-old self having the same conversation with Ben Ashford. What does your gut tell you? I asked her. that I should maintain control of my own work, that I should insist on equal partnerships, not just technical roles, that I should get everything in writing and have my own lawyers review every document. Then trust your gut. And remember, you don't need anyone else to validate your worth. You just need to protect it. 6 months later, that young woman launched her own company. She raised funding from investors who respected her leadership, not just her technical skills. Her prosthetic device is now in clinical trials and showing remarkable results. She sends me updates regularly, and each one makes me more proud of the world we're building for the next generation. This is why I tell my story, even when it's painful to relive. This is why I speak at conferences and universities and community centers. This is why I mentor young women and support legal challenges and fund educational programs. Because every person who hears this story and decides to fight for themselves, every person who refuses to accept less than they deserve, every person who stands up and says shut up to injustice, they're creating a world where fewer families will go through what Amara and I went through. The morning I walked into that convention center, I thought I was just trying to expose one man's crimes. I didn't realize I was starting a movement. I didn't know that my pain could become someone else's power, that my struggle could become someone else's strength, that my voice could amplify thousands of other voices. But that's what happens when we tell the truth, even when it's difficult to relive. That's what happens when we refuse to stay silent, even when speaking up feels dangerous. That's what happens when we believe in justice, even when the odds seem impossible. Today, as I finish telling you this story, Amara is practicing violin in our living room. The melody drifts through the house, something beautiful and complex and perfectly her own creation. She's composing her own music now, not just playing other people's compositions. She's learned that her voice matters, that her creativity has value, that she has the right to be heard. And when tomorrow she faces the world with her own dreams and ambitions, she'll carry with her the knowledge that her mother never gave up, that her father died fighting for truth, that her voice, her beautiful, powerful, irreplaceable voice is stronger than any lie anyone might try to tell about her. But before I let you go, let me tell you about the moments that almost broke me completely. The moments when I questioned everything, when I wondered if fighting was worth it, when I almost gave up entirely. Because those moments are part of the story too, and they might be the most important part for someone listening who's going through their own dark valley right now. It was February 2019, and we'd been living in my car for 3 months. Amara was 6 years old, and Chicago was experiencing one of the coldest winters on record. The shelters were overcrowded, and we'd been on waiting lists for weeks. Every night, I'd run the engine for 20 minutes to keep us warm, then turn it off to save gas, then run it again when I could hear Amara's teeth chattering in her sleep. I'd found a 24-hour McDonald's where the manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, would let us sit for hours as long as I bought coffee. Amara would do her homework at those sticky tables while I used the free Wi-Fi to continue working on my algorithm improvements. Mrs. Rodriguez never said anything directly, but she'd always bring Amara an extra cookie or a small toy from the Happy Meals. Small acts of kindness that kept us going when everything else felt impossible. One night, around 2 a.m., I was parked outside that McDonald's trying to get Amara back to sleep after she'd woken up crying from the cold when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Precious Williams? The voice was professional, female, unfamiliar. Yes, who's asking? My name is Dr. Esther Kingsley. I'm a researcher at Northwestern University, and I've been following your case. I know what Ben Ashford did to you. I felt my heart stop. After years of people dismissing my claims or treating me like I was delusional, here was someone who believed me. Dr. Kingsley, how do you know about my case? Your husband David interviewed me 3 years ago for his article series. I gave him documentation showing that Ashford had tried to steal research from other women in the industry, women who were too scared or too isolated to fight back. David was building a pattern of behavior case when he paused, and I could hear the emotion in her voice. When he passed away, I've been trying to find you ever since to give you the evidence he collected. I started crying right there in that McDonald's parking lot, holding my sleeping daughter in the freezing car. After years of feeling completely alone, here was proof that David's work had mattered, that other people knew the truth. Dr. Kingsley, I don't have money for lawyers anymore. I don't have resources to fight him. You don't need money, precious. You need allies, and there are more of us than you think. That phone call changed everything. Dr. Kingsley connected me with a network of women in tech who had similar experiences with Ben and other men like him. Women who had been silenced, marginalized, or pushed out of the industry after creating valuable innovations. There was Dr. Patricia Johnson, a Black biochemist whose cancer research methodology had been appropriated by a pharmaceutical company that made billions while she struggled to find funding for her continued work. There was Maria Santos, a Latina engineer whose water purification system design had been adapted by a major corporation without credit or compensation. There was Dr. Jennifer Kim, a Korean-American computer scientist whose machine learning breakthrough had been published under her male colleague's name. We started meeting virtually every week, sharing strategies, supporting each other emotionally, pooling our resources. They helped me understand legal concepts I'd never grasped. They connected me with journalists who specialize in corporate malfeasance. Most importantly, they reminded me that I wasn't crazy, I wasn't alone, and I wasn't wrong to keep fighting. But even with their support, there were nights when I wanted to give up completely. The worst night was March 8th, 2019, International Women's Day, if you can believe the cruel irony. Amara had caught a cold that was turning into something more serious, but we didn't have health insurance and I couldn't afford urgent care. She was running a fever and coughing so hard that she couldn't sleep. I was driving around Chicago at midnight looking for an emergency room that might treat her without demanding payment up front, when I saw a billboard, a massive advertisement for APCA Medical Technologies featuring Ben's smiling face and the tagline, "Saving Lives Through Innovation." My innovation, my life's work, being used to advertise the fortune built on my stolen dreams while my daughter suffered because I couldn't afford basic medical care. I pulled over and just screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw, until my voice was gone, until I had nothing left. Then I sat in that car, holding my sick child in the freezing car, and seriously considered giving up. What was the point of fighting? What was the point of pursuing justice? What was the point of anything if this was where the righteous path led? Amara stirred in her sleep and whispered, "Mama, are you sad?" "Yes, baby. Mama's very sad right now." She opened her fever-bright eyes and looked at me with such clarity, such wisdom that it took my breath away. "Daddy used to say that being sad was okay, but giving up wasn't. He said that's how the bad people win when the good people give up." In that moment, I heard David's voice as clearly as if he were sitting in the car with us. I remembered something he'd said during those early days when we were first fighting Ben in court. "Precious, we're not just fighting for us. We're fighting for everyone who comes after us. We're fighting so that other families don't have to go through this." I took Amara to the emergency room that night, and I didn't leave until she was properly treated, regardless of the cost. I added another few $1,000s to our medical debt, but she got better, and I recommitted myself to the fight. The next few months were a blur of preparation. Dr. Kingsley's network had grown into something larger, an informal coalition of women who had been silenced or sidelined in STEM fields. We called ourselves the Innovation Justice Project, and we were planning something unprecedented. We were going to use the Healthcare Innovation Summit as our platform, but not in the way I originally imagined. Instead of just me confronting Ben, we were going to present a coordinated case study of systematic intellectual property theft in the tech industry. We had documentation spanning 15 years, involving dozens of women representing billions of dollars in stolen innovations. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Ben would give his presentation about APCA 3.0, completely unaware that we knew it was fraudulent. Then, instead of a disruption, we would have a scheduled follow-up presentation titled Innovation Attribution in Healthcare Technology. Dr. Kingsley had secured the speaking slot under the pretense of discussing research methodology standards. Ben would have to sit there and watch us systematically dismantle his entire career, using his own fraudulent presentation as Exhibit A in a broader case about industry-wide theft of women's intellectual property. But life, as I've learned, rarely goes according to plan. 2 weeks before this summit, I received a phone call that changed everything. It was from Agent Rebecca Darnell with the FBI's White Collar Crime Division. Miss Williams, we've been investigating Mr. Ashford for securities fraud related to his recent APCA 3.0 announcements. We understand you have information that might be relevant. I was sitting in the public library where I'd been doing research, and I nearly dropped the phone. Agent Darnell, I've been trying to get law enforcement to take my case seriously for years. What changed? We received a tip from someone inside Ashford Medical Technologies, someone with access to internal communications and financial records. The evidence suggests a pattern of fraud that goes beyond intellectual property theft into active investor deception. The insider, it turned out, was Ben's own chief technology officer, Dr. Michael Thompson, a man who had been hired 3 years earlier to lead the APCA 3.0 development and had gradually realized that the project was impossible because the foundational code was incomplete. Ben had only stolen the surface layer of my work. He didn't understand the underlying principles that made it function. Dr. Thompson had spent 2 years trying to reverse engineer my algorithm from the existing APCA system, but without understanding my original methodology, he couldn't create the advanced features that APCA 3.0 promised. When Ben ordered him to fake the demonstration for the summit, Dr. Thompson realized he would be complicit in defrauding investors and potentially endangering patients. So he came forward with everything. Internal emails showing Ben knew the system didn't work, financial records showing how investment money was being misused, communication logs proving that Ben had deliberately lied to shareholders about the project's progress. Miss Williams, we need you to testify before a federal grand jury. Your original work documentation, combined with Dr. Thompson's insider evidence, gives us everything we need to build an airtight case. I should have been thrilled. This was the justice I'd been fighting for. This was the validation I needed for years. But instead, I felt terrified. Agent Darnell, if I testify, if I go public with this, Ben will know I'm working with law enforcement. He killed my husband for threatening to expose him. What's to stop him from coming after me and my daughter?
Ms. Williams, we can offer you and your daughter protection, witness security, relocation if necessary. This man has committed serious federal crimes, and we have the evidence to put him away forever. But we need your testimony to make it stick. That night, I held Amara close as she slept in our little shelter bed, and I wrestled with the most difficult decision of my life. I could stay quiet, stay hidden, keep my daughter safe. We could disappear somewhere, start over with new names, try to build a life where Ben could never find us. Or I could stand up, speak out, risk everything for the chance at real justice. I thought about David, about the research he died trying to expose. I thought about Dr. Kingsley and all the other women whose voices had been silenced. I thought about the young women who would come after us, who would face the same choices I was facing. But mostly, I thought about Amara. What kind of world did I want to leave for her? What kind of mother did I want to be? In the morning, I called Agent Darnell back. I'll testify, I told her, but I want to do more than that. I want to confront him publicly first. I want the world to see who he really is before he disappears into the federal prison system. Agent Darnell was hesitant. A public confrontation could compromise their investigation, could give Ben time to destroy evidence or flee. Ms. Williams, we appreciate your courage, but we need to do this by the book. Let us handle the arrest, then you can tell your story during the trial. No, I said firmly. For 15 years, this man has controlled the narrative. He's painted me as a delusional ex-employee with a grudge. He's used his wealth and power to silence anyone who tried to tell the truth. I won't let him hide behind lawyers and plea bargains and sealed court records. What are you proposing? I'm proposing that we let him give his fraudulent presentation exactly as planned. Let him stand up in front of hundreds of industry leaders and investors and lie to their faces about technology he stole and can't deliver. And then, when he's committed perjury in front of cameras and witnesses, when there's no way to deny what he's done, that's when I stand up and tell the truth. Agent Darnell was quiet for a long moment. Ms. Williams, that's incredibly dangerous. If he realizes you're there, if he suspects you're working with us, then you better have agents positioned throughout that auditorium, because I'm doing this with or without FBI cooperation. The only question is whether you want to be there to arrest him when I'm finished. 3 days later, Agent Darnell called me back. We're in, but Ms. Williams, you follow our security protocols exactly. You wear a wire, you have agents within 50 feet of you at all times, and if things go sideways, you get out immediately. Understood. And, Ms. Williams, for what it's worth, what you're doing is incredibly brave. Your husband would be proud. Not because I had money or influence or connections, but because I had truth. Not because I was famous or celebrated or recognized, but because I knew my worth. Not because the fight was over, but because I was finally ready to fight with everything I had. And when the moment came, when Ben dismissed me as some homeless woman in front of all those cameras and microphones and witnesses, I didn't hesitate. I stood up and I reclaimed my voice. Shut up! Those 2 words contained 15 years of silence, grief, struggle, and determination. They carried the weight of stolen dreams and murdered innocence, and a mother's love for her daughter. They represented every woman who had been told she wasn't enough, every innovator who had been erased from their own story, every voice that had been silenced by power and greed. But most of all, they represented hope. Hope that justice was possible, that truth mattered, that ordinary people could stand up to extraordinary corruption and win. The rest, as they say, is history. Ben's arrest, the trial, the conviction, the restoration of my work and reputation, the movement that grew from that single moment of defiance, the women who found their voices because I had found mine, the changes in industry practices and legal protections that followed. But the real story isn't about any of that. The real story is about a mother who refused to let her daughter grow up in a world where thieves prosper and victims suffer in silence. The real story is about love being stronger than hate, truth being more powerful than lies, and justice being worth any price. Today, when I tell this story to audiences around the world, I always end with the same message. Your voice matters. Your work matters. Your dreams matter. And no one, no matter how powerful, how wealthy, or how connected, has the right to take any of that away from you.
But more than that, you have the responsibility to use your voice, to protect your work, to pursue your dreams. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. Because the world changes one voice at a time, one stand at a time. One person deciding that enough is enough. So find your voice, use your voice, and if anyone ever tries to silence it, remember a homeless single mother who stood up to a billionaire and shouted, "Shut up," and won. Because if I can do it, you can do it too. And together, we can change the world. Now tell me, have you ever witnessed or experienced a woman being belittled or ridiculed because of her gender or color? Share your experience below, as I'd love to know about others too. Before you go, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with your loved ones. We post videos every single day on this channel, so it's a good thing if you check out other videos here too. Don't forget to comment your thoughts and opinions on this story. We'll see you in the next story. Bye.